Hey there. We don't always want to hear it when we're going through recovery and finding it really difficult, but breaking behaviours and, smashing our way out of a rut actually comes from within us. We can get lots and lots of help from therapists and professionals and befrienders and family and friends that support us. And I think all of those are really, really valuable. But some of those behaviours and the ruts that we build up around our eating disorder, they can only be mastered by the work that we put in ourselves. So I just wanted to mention today a couple of the things that I found myself habitually resuming when I was relapsing at different stages in my eating disorder recovery. And there were things like I would buy food items and then I would stick them in a cupboard or in the back of the fridge and kind of make them inaccessible. I sort of knew I was doing it, and it was almost trickery that, oh, well, I bought them so I intend to eat them, but then I'd make them less accessible. I wouldn't see them all the time. So then all of a sudden, they go off, or I don't see them, I don't use them. You've got to allow your brain to engage with those items every single day. You've got to remind yourself that they're there to be eaten. It's not good enough to buy the food and then be ditching it a week later. You've got to get into that habit of purchasing those items. So that's one step of self-care. It's kind of having the knowledge that you need to have these items. Purchasing is just one step. Putting them in your fridge or cupboard is great. It's better than bare fridges or cupboards. But then you have to start doing the do. You have to start eating. You have to start making the food. You have to start preparing and eating it. And so I would often do that about kind of visibility of food, just this weird behaviour that I knew myself I was doing. And then beyond that, it was things that I would keep sealed, and that was really never helpful to me. So I was mentioning to somebody I was coaching that one thing I would do with cheese, for example, is I knew that there was an option of buying pre-grated cheese or buying a block of cheese. Now, even as I stood at the end of an aisle or whatever, looking at the dairy, I would know that it would be more sensible for me to buy the pre-grated. Why? Because I knew that when my body was craving cheese, or I just needed to put a handful of it into a sandwich or on a jacket potato, it would be much, much easier for eating disorder recovery not to have to overthink unsealing the packet, cutting it off, preparing it and putting it on the item, or worrying about whether I cut off too much or too little. But when I reached the supermarket, I would talk myself out of buying the pre-grated because I would always say, oh, it's more expensive and that's the lazy option. Actually, these were just excuses. That's all they were. They were excuses to allow the eating disorder to win. So for simple things like that, I would buy the block, but as soon as I got it home, I would make it into grated portions, or I would just grate into a big pot so that I knew it was more easily accessible to take a handful out and add it to whatever I needed. Similarly, biscuits. I would buy a packet of biscuits. For how long did I buy packets of biscuits and then say it would have to stay sealed unless somebody came around the house to have a biscuit with me? Now, every day since my recovery, I have a biscuit tin. So as soon as I buy a packet of biscuits, I empty the biscuits into a tin. They are accessible. I can take 1, 2 or 3 whenever I want. I'm not staring at the sealed packet. These are really simple and rather silly things, but they're about challenging patterns of behaviour and really going beyond your own rituals and regimes. I'd love to know what other ones that you've done that feel at the time somewhat silly, but really do help in recovery.